Hello, everybody. I'm Tori Rich from the Bennington banner via Cat TV. And joining me today is Mrs. Miri Gantshar from Israel. And she's here to talk to us about her experience uh, since it's been about 3.5 weeks now since the initial attack by Hamas. And it's an ongoing situation. But Mrs. Gantshar has a connection to Bennington here. It's your sister or your sister-in-law that lives here in Bennington. Is that right?
Lee. Thank you, Tori. Actually, a family friend. She has been a very close friend of my sister's, and she knew me when I was an infant. So our families go way back. We're very close.
Well, I'm really glad that she got us connected. This is an important topic that especially now as sometimes things fade from the public consciousness, and so I think now is as important a time as ever to be talking about what's going on over in Israel. And so I'm really glad to have you on. Thank you for being here with us. And
Thank you. Thank you for asking for the story. We appreciate it.
Of course, it was a pleasure to talk to you, and really just to put a face to this, and I don't know, we hear news reports every day, but to have a tangible voice and face to this is very important. So I'm very very grateful for that. But yeah, so it just can you give us a little bit of background? I mean, so you moved to Israel 16 years ago. And
Yes.
you said your husband is a international search specialist. Is that what you said? Sorry.
He owns and operates an international search firm. And so because of that, we actually have a lot of contact with people from different countries, and we travel a bit, and so it's interesting to really be able to get out there and get other people's take, and that's what I think a lot of us lack. A lot of people lack the take from other perspectives. They know what they see. They know what they see in the news, but they don't know, and they don't talk to people who are in the area. For instance, I am very fortunate. I've traveled to many, many different places, including places where I've met people from Lebanon. I've been to Dubai since the Abraham Accords. And I've spoken with a lot of people, and I've gotten their viewpoints and what they think. And it can be very surprising to people when they hear it from someone else. And that's what I think is really important right now.
I it's funny you mentioned Lebanon. I have a coworker and good friend who's from Lebanon too, and very smart guy. So getting his perspective is, like you said, it's been very valuable. Um, you know, you talk about the media. I say it like I'm not part of the media, but we
We
kind
won't
of.
hold it against you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll hold it against myself, um, we tend to use buzzwords and things to simplify things for people. And so one thing that it keeps being thrown around is that this is Israel's 9/11, and you have the unique perspective. You still lived in the United States when 9/11 happened, and I can already imagine the differences given that you live right next to it. Like we didn't live right next to it when 9/11 happened. But can you speak to that a little more? How accurate do you think that characterization is?
I think it's very accurate. I think we here have been also saying that this is our 9/11. Like with 9/11, we were hit by an unprecedented attack, meaning that the level of attack and the level of brutality and the fact that it was so carefully planned. And obviously, just like with 9/11, we know that there was, financial support and planning from a greater power, not a good power. And when this happened here, um, that's what we all said. And we were all trying to scramble to figure out how did it happen? But I remember 9/11 very much. And I remember the shock. And I remember just watching them come down and being on the phone with my mother who lived in the area, and the two of us just crying, watching together. And we never thought we would see it in our lifetime. And this has come to the people of Israel in a similar way. This was not something we thought we would see. And unfortunately, the aftermath is also not something that we thought we would see.
And not that 9/11 was over, so to speak, for us. Once it happened, there was aftermath for us in the United States, but the aftermath has to be a little bit different for you right now, given that you're living about. So we talked that Israel's about the size of New Jersey or Rhode Island. It's not
Rhode Island
country land wise,
it's tiny.
And
It's
Gaza
tiny.
Gaza's basically maybe a couple of cities worth in size and population. So we're talking about a very small area, and you mentioned this before that you said we all lived together, prior to this, and you still do, right?
Yes. So there's so much I could get into, and it's hard for me and it's hard for others because we read things online, and sometimes I just wish I could grab some of, the Palestinians that I knew who came. There are a lot of the Palestinians. I'm going to use the term West Bank. For political reasons in Israel, a lot of us don't like the term West Bank because it's a reference to Jordan. But I will use the term West Bank for our purposes. So I live on a moshav, which is basically an old farming village. And I live halfway between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and about 38 miles from the Gaza Strip. And we mix all the time. And so when someone like me who lives in Israel doesn't have somebody like you giving us a place and saying, what is it like? You're basically silenced, because everyone, and I mentioned this to you off the cuff before, a really good story about people that hate each other is a good seller journalistically. No one wants to hear about how the Palestinians that live, 10 minutes from me used to come and work on my house for a year and a half. Many of them are very skilled. They do beautiful tiling. They're hired in a lot of building jobs. They're very skilled, and they value the work, and we value their work too. And they would come over and they get building permits, and they would come over from 10 minutes away, the West Bank, and they value their jobs. And we wait for them to come, and they would come in and, good morning, Miri. And I'd say, good morning, Mahmoud, how are you? And, guys, I got you, pizzas and hummus for lunch today. And Miri, where's the Turkish coffee? And this is part of our life. So it's so strange for us when everywhere we go, we are hearing words like occupation and apartheid and genocide, because it's just not what we're seeing. And you can't, many times people, they don't want to hear it because it's not a story that will sell. And it's sad. It's sad that is what people are hungry for. They're hungry they want to hear me say, I hate Palestinians and I want them all dead. And that's just not the case. And it's not the case for the people I know. And that doesn't sell.
Right. No, Israel versus Palestine, and then lumping Palestine, saying that basically Hamas speaks for Palestine is obviously people need to learn the difference there, and that's can you speak a little bit to that as well, like what is the what is the overall, because it sounds like you and your husband are very worldly, you've traveled around, and
Yes.
that does a lot for breaking down barriers and making somebody understand. But in Israel in general, is there a lot of that sentiment within Israel that Hamas speaks for Palestine and things like that, or would you say that your sentiment is similar to, obviously it's very nuanced and there are
Yeah.
different ends of the spectrum, just like in the United
Yeah.
States, but
Sure. So, I mean, I always try to I will give disclaimers as to, what is fact and what is a feeling.
perfect. That's exactly what I would, yeah.
Of course. So there is distrust based on the narrative that has been perpetuated more than on our relationships. If you walk around Israel, there are Arabs and there are Jews, the Muslims and the Jews, and we interact and we work together and we learn together. And my kids in university, and my son lives in a hostel for autistic young men, and the people who run and work there are largely Arab. I mean, I don't think people get that I don't think they understand it. And again, it doesn't sell. That's not the narrative they want to hear. Yes, there are problems. I won't sugarcoat it. There are problems. I have a son who served in the special forces. And yes, one of the reasons that the United States and Israel are such tight allies is because they share intelligence, and there are many things that we can contribute to each other. And we definitely are grateful to the US for every bit of help that it gives us at all times, especially now, of course. But the real frustration is in the lack of knowledge. And right now, what's making me crazy, I mean, I would never, even if I was in America right now, I would never want to send my kids to Ivy League universities. I have a master's degree from America. My husband went to a good school. But when I was in university, they taught us how to think. And now universities are teaching what to think. And
I was a teacher in high school for a little while, and I can sort of relate to what you're saying. It's very frustrating. I know what you're saying there.
It is. And you don't, just like I used to hear that young people in America, I'm concerned about America because I'm American. I lived there till I was 41 years old. I hope nobody's doing the math. But anyway, just had a birthday. But
49, right?
Exactly. You're good in math. But the truth is, they used to talk about how young people in America couldn't find anything on a map. And I hear now how there are very basic historical facts that people are completely in the dark about, but they seem to want to remain there. And that is disheartening for me. And that's disheartening for people around us. We're not asking everyone to, please be with us and hate, because we're not trying to hate, but there are certain basic premises that are just fact. I mean, how many people say, for instance, this is just a small, well, Israel is occupying Gaza. Israel pulled every citizen out of Gaza in August of 2005. Everyone watching can look it up. It was the disengagement from Gush Katif. There are videos on YouTube. There were peaceful protests. There were tears. The communities in Gaza were beautiful seaside communities with people living side by side. And for years, the Muslims and Jews that lived there for many, many years were fine. They did business. They sat down for a cup of coffee together. These are the things that people don't understand. Israel withdrew. So when you hear somebody make the statement that Israel occupies Gaza, it is a blatant error. So these are the kinds of things but you wonder, do people want to hear? Do they really want to hear that that's not true?
Yeah, people just love a simple narrative, and the truth is very messy and in the gray area. And
yes. So those are the kinds of things that I feel that even if you don't live in Israel and haven't had Mahmoud and Atollah and Salim coming to your house every day and chatting with you and helping you with your son who won't get in the car and go to school, even if you haven't done that, there are basic facts. We have Google, but everyone's getting their news from TikTok. And I find that to be very troubling, very problematic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because things are also, TikTok is digesting things in bite-sized bits where you can't get anywhere near the amount of context that you need. And I'm actually really glad we started with this. I think some people would say I'm burying the lead because, of course, you're living with rocket attacks, and but I think this is of the utmost importance to get this message out and make people. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like would you describe some Palestinians as your friends? As
I definitely, I can tell you that because I don't live next door to Palestinians, but there are Palestinian Arabs and there are Israeli Arabs. Israeli Arabs, they're the ones that work with my son. I mean, these people I love. I ask them, are you okay? Thank you so much for taking care of my son through this war. They're scared too. There are a lot of people that I'm not close to because I'm not next to them. I definitely have people that I have been very friendly with, people I care about. Definitely, we've invited them over. There was one man who years ago we knew he was a foreman in our old house where he lived, and I worried about him, and he wasn't feeling well, and his wife was traveling, and I said, why don't you come over? Why don't you come over for dinner? And for sure, my daughter-in-law is a nurse. She works in a hospital in Jerusalem, and she has Arab friends. So it's not, look, we have to be careful. We do have to be careful. I mean, there's no question. The people that were living in the communities that were slaughtered were largely friendly toward Palestinians. That's also a fact. Ambulance drivers that used to go and drive them from the Gaza border into Israeli hospitals. Yes, they can use our hospitals. So they were the ones that largely took the brunt of the attack. And that's also, how do you put that in context? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that a lot of people are aware of. So I'm really glad that you're bringing it to light. And it just sounds like such a shame. I mean, it sounds like there are, I don't want to oversimplify it, but we have racial tensions in the United States too, and it sounds more like that than anything. Where there are people that are going to hate no matter what, and there are people that are going to love no matter what, and it's and there's a whole spectrum, and it sounds like it's the same thing. But Israel and Palestine aren't monoliths. It's very nuanced, and people struggle to study nuance, I guess. I think it's really a shame. I mean, I'm obviously from a bird's eye view on the entire situation, but it's just a shame. It seems like part of the motivation for the attack might have been that Israel was trying to build up relations with Saudi Arabia, and so Iran didn't want that, and so that's obviously that's I think still speculation at this point, but informed speculation.
Look, I think a lot is going to come out. There's a lot that's, again, I have children all over the southern border right now. They're all serving. I had a son who was in America from March. He was the one in special forces, and he came back to serve. And I can tell you firsthand, all we want, and I believe, and I know at this point, this is not like any other situation. This situation, Israel is going to finish. And that is why they are telling the Palestinians, you must go south. We need to get the rocket launchers. We need to get the terror tunnels. But I got to tell you, Tori, and I cannot let this opportunity go by without saying it. And I've heard Arabs on social media saying it, the United Nations, the other countries of the world, they should have taken some responsibility for the fact that Palestinians had been occupied by Hamas. I mean, the Israelis left the Gaza Strip in 2005, okay? 2005. 18 years ago. Where was the UN when aid money was coming in? And I'm still hearing they live in refugee camps. How can you be living in a refugee camp in a beautiful piece of land that you wanted? Who is keeping you a refugee? Hamas is keeping them refugees. They were voted in democratically. And when people say that, I'm cautious. I don't know how democratic the first election was. Hamas is a terror organization. If you're an American and you trust your government, look it up. It's with Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad. It is on the list. There's about maybe 70 on the designated foreign terrorist organization list from the United States of America. Hamas is on it. So how can everyone else in the world not ask, where's this aid going? Were there pleas from Palestinians to the United Nations, UNRWA schools sitting in the Gaza Strip with launchers next to them? And we're hearing about how there's no food and there's no water and there's no medicine. I can lift up right now and show you my rocket app. It doesn't stop going off. There's a lot of expensive rockets. So maybe there's no food, but that's Hamas, and Hamas needs to be stopped. And if the Palestinian people are going to have any chance at life, they will need to be liberated from Hamas. But where is the world? Where's the world in that? The son of Hamas. Have you heard of him? You ever read his book?
Oh, no, ma'am.
Fascinating. I haven't either. His father, I'm sorry that I don't have the name handy right now, but his father was the founder of Hamas, the original founder.
Oh, I did see. This is horrible because we just talked about social media, but the son of the founder of Hamas was speaking out against it. Yeah, I did see.
Yes, yes, and he stepped away from. He happened to step away from Islam. And again, I have Muslim friends. It's not Islam, but he stepped away, and he was very drawn to, as he calls it, he's not a Christian, but he was drawn to Christ consciousness because it was about loving kindness, okay? And he says, as somebody who knows the organization well, he says, this is not Israel's job The U.S. has to put pressure on Egypt to allow the Palestinians in so that finally Israel can topple Hamas, and then we'll go from there. And this is 18 years in the making in the Gaza Strip alone. So it's been building a long time, and unfortunately, I don't mean to be critical, but we have a lot of friends in the world. But where was the UN? Where were the other nations? And it's very troubling that now they're worried about the Palestinian people.
Yeah, you make a good point. I know, I mean, just the situation in Palestine itself is, even for such a small country, is very nuanced as well. And I know there are two different political parties. One, I don't recall their names at the moment, but basically, regardless of the political party, there was a survey done recently. I don't know how you conduct a survey in Palestine, and the reason I don't know how you do it, because I think it was a majority. I know that I think it was 60 to 70% of Palestinians don't feel like they could speak out against the government.
Well, that's
reprisal. So, and that's and when you're talking about basic needs not being met, like food and shelter and things of that nature, I know from my time in Afghanistan, nothing radicalizes people more quickly than being hungry and not being taken care of. So obviously,
exactly.
The leaders of terrorist organizations aren't stupid, and they know how to massage the narrative to make it, you could say, make it Israel's fault and not their own government's fault. And that's just purely speculation. This is from my bird's eye view, but
well, you look at the leader of Hamas now. He's not sitting in Gaza. He's telling all of them what to do. He's sitting in some fancy palace over in Qatar. I mean, that speaks volumes. You have Queen Rania from Jordan who says, my people are suffering. Well, that's great, Rania. So how many are you bringing into Jordan? Oh, we're not going to do that.
Right.
I mean, think about that. I mean, to me, that's obvious. To me, it's obvious. So,
I believe they justified that as if we let everyone come into Jordan, then Palestine wouldn't exist. That was a reasoning that I heard, but
no, but what about the West Bank Palestinians? They're fine. You asked me if we have friends that are Palestinians. So one of the guys that used to work here, sweetheart of a guy, very fine man, and he particularly was very kind to my son. And I mentioned, like, I would yell for him to, Atala, I need help. I can't get him in the car to go to school. And he'd say, I'm coming, Miri. And he would come over and he'd dump my son in the car, and my son would be laughing, and he was very sweet. And I asked him one day, I said, do you have are you happy with your life where you live? He lives out in the West Bank, and again, there are Jews and there are Muslims living in the West Bank, and everybody kind of lives in neighboring villages. That's why, again, when we talk about occupation is occurring when there should be no Jews in Israel. So we won't even go there. So I said to him, do you like where you live? And he said, oh, Miri, beautiful. It's beautiful. I have vineyards. I have this, I have that. You should come shopping. The Jews from across the road, there's a city there. They come shopping all the time. I said, would it be safe? He said, absolutely. I'll meet you and you'll come in. And I said, and do you like your government? And he said, no, I like yours better. And I said, why? He said, because they take our money and they give us nothing. So, and this is not with a Hamas government. This is the Palestinian Authority, so all the more so. But that's not to say that there are not terror groups in the West Bank, and there is a Hamas presence, and it is about 3 kilometers behind my house as I speak to you. One of the guys that used to come to my house, they tried to burn down his house because he wouldn't join Hamas. And this is along with what you're saying. But where's the rest of the world to help out? And that's when you know who cares. And I've spoken, as I said, I've spoken with many people. I've spoken with Lebanese Christians who say, we believe that the Israeli government is in cahoots with Hezbollah. And we asked them, why on earth would you think that? They said, because we hate Hezbollah for what they have done to our country. And we know that Israel could conquer Hezbollah in a second, and they haven't. So why wouldn't they? And we've heard this not from one, two, we've heard this from about 3 or 4 Lebanese people that we've met. We've talked with Saudis, we've met people from Qatar, and they're not willing to help the Palestinians. They have their own ideas. And this is where you have a people that, yes, they've become downtrodden. And like you said, you raised an excellent point. You said this is the narrative they need to control them. And this is how they get it done. And they're pawns. And it's horrible. It's horrible. But Israel we're not going to go to this place again. We're not going to watch men, women, and babies slaughtered, beheaded, burned alive. We're not doing it again. We're done, and we're taking out Hamas, and it's just going to happen. One way or another, it will happen. It has to happen. Because I'm in my late 50s. I'm manning the cameras on my moshav. I'm doing like the 12 midnight to 6 a.m. shifts because there's older people and people with babies who can't do it. We're guarding all over. We're guarding the gates. We're guarding all the time now. We've never had to do this before. That's what my life is like right now.
That's actually, I'd like you to, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask what life was like right now. Everything you just said has been very enlightening, but have things, I know I'd say was it about the first week was very intense. Has it subsided at all since, or?
The first week was the first. I think there were 8 of us in the house. The day it happened, October 7th, it was our Sabbath. It was Shabbat, and it was also the last of the 4 large. We have 4 holidays in the Hebrew month of Tishrei. It's the first month of the Jewish year. Starts with Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. So it ends with a holiday called Simchat Torah. It's about joy in the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. And we had 8 people here in our home for the holiday. And by the end of the day, we had 4 because 4 were called up. It was like the Yom Kippur War. And we were woken up at 6:30 in the morning by a siren. Our daughter was knocking at our door. I heard it in my sleep. Mom, Dad, you got to wake up. We got a siren. She's our married daughter. She and her husband are both in the service. And we went. And then one of the guys, I think, turned on his phone. We don't use our phones on the Sabbath. We are observant of the Sabbath, so we don't use electricity. I could not do this interview on Friday, if you remember, because
I didn't know that was live, but okay.
Yeah, that's why. So, one of them turned on his phone because in the Army, you got to kind of know if you're going to get called in, if there's a siren. And it was a surprise. There was nothing going on. There were no we hadn't been bombing them. They hadn't been firing rockets, which is why we would go over and drop. So it was a surprise. None of us were expecting it. And when they went on, we first found out that, sorry.
No, take your time.
We first found out that about 7 towns were under Hamas control. And it was a shock. It was a shock. Because we don't let that happen. We don't let Hamas take over anything. And it wasn't until later that we found out about the massacres, and I still limit, and the hostages, I still limit my intake of the news and what happened. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and I can't. And I would never hurt anyone's children. And my son came home, and he came home from America with a bunch of friends. The reserves have come back in droves, plane loads from everywhere, from Peru, from America. And he said something to me. And he said, Mom, do you remember when you and Dad used to watch the videos of us bombing Gaza when we would be taking tons of rockets and we had to try to take out the rocket launchers? And do you remember on the media, you would see the Palestinian children and you guys would cry? He said, I just need to give you some context here, Mom. That was 16 years ago. And this week, those same kids, some of those same kids walked in and slaughtered families in the South. And he's right.
Yeah.
He's right. And so my heart has a bit of a steel wall around it right now. Because
I think you bring up a good point, that it's just, there's, like you said, you're a mother, you're a grandmother, and emotions run high right now. But you already spoke to it to a certain point, that I don't think it doesn't sound like most Israelis are wishing death upon the children of Palestine or anything of that nature. Again, I think that's how it's been painted, but it's Israel is cold and unfeeling, and I think it's been like you said, it's been probably overplayed. Yeah.
It's not just overplayed. It's I mean, I'm gonna venture to say, and you've been kind enough to give me this platform, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but it's a lot of lies. It's a lot of it's not how it is. It's not how life is here. And the other thing that I have to say is, when you see them shouting on street corners in America.
Thank you. I was actually going to ask you about that
as well. Israel, you can't hide. We want Jewish genocide. We say never again. I woke up this week and I said, again? You tell me in what world that has become acceptable. Not in the world I was raised in. And honestly, my feeling is that it's the time to choose. You can choose. You can stay silent, or you can speak up and say, you know what, that's wrong. That's wrong. but you have to choose. The time has come to choose. And that's it. And then, there's different sides and there's fact, there's historical fact. And then there are things that people don't know. Some of the things I'm sharing with you today are things people don't know. But who was there grieving with America on 9/11 and who was celebrating? People have very short memories, Tori.
I think, for people to have the freedom to say that over here in the United States, it's with freedom, though, comes responsibility to educate yourself. And unfortunately, not a lot of us are exercising that responsibility, to educate ourselves. So, yeah.
Yes. But you're helping people become educated when they are encouraged to, read about the disengagement from Gush Katif, read about the 10 peace initiatives that were rejected between 1948 and 2000. You can educate yourself, right? Not you.
No, me too.
But people can educate themselves. What's troubling is that many don't want to. And what is coming out, and the word that no one wants to hear me say, but I'm going to say it, is it's pure anti-Semitism. It's, we hate you from the river to the sea. You understand that is, we don't want a Jewish state anywhere. We don't want Jews. That's what it means. Make no mistake, that's what it means. So when you hear that, that should ring a bell in the head. And there's no way out of that. That's what that rhetoric is. But the country of my birth, America, it's there for us. Not everyone is there, but it's there. We have gotten an overwhelming amount of support from people all over. My husband and I, the first week of the war, decided to go into action because it was just too painful to think about. Hostages, how are we going to do it with hostages there? And there's been 230 total babies being held hostage. Can anyone listening to this imagine having someone march into your house with our heads wrapped up, brandishing weapons and machetes, and watch them take your baby before they shoot you? I mean,
it's unfathomable.
It's unfathomable. But my husband said to me, a week after this happens, Miri, they will forget. They will forget. And we're seeing it. You're seeing it, I know. And we're all seeing it. So my husband and I, we decided to act. We've had 2 families from the South come up and stay. We've taken care of them. Our whole village has taken care of them. We've gotten trauma experts. They had their cities taken over. They saw things and they're in bad shape. The children, they ran around my house turning on lights. They're terrified. They saw Hamas in their towns, wondering if they were going to be, invaded in their homes. So we took in some families and we took care of them. And then from this tragedy was born an organization, and it's called People for Israel, because it's for all people, any people. And we have started a website. We've been getting donors from all over the world. And as I said, my husband is a businessman. He's doing this all in his own time. Has not had the easiest time at work this past month because he's been throwing it all into this. It helps families. It helped feed our military who had to go down and just protect what was left. We started with pasta bolognese, making it in different homes on my shop, packaging it. It's gone to everything from socks and underwear to headlamps to all kinds of different things, clothing and feeding families. And it's helping us derail Hamas and help the Palestinians that have been living under their occupation for the past 18 years. And I'm very happy to say it's been extremely successful. We've raised thousands of dollars, many thousands of dollars. And as soon as it comes in, it goes out. And
you have an estimate of how much has been raised?
Yes. I believe at last count, we had raised that somewhere around $83,000.
This is with you and your husband heading this up
Yes, yeah.
How can people donate, or how can people help?
So we have a website, and through that website you can actually enter. Again, this is a small operation. This is just us and a few volunteers. I said to my husband, you're going to have to make a spreadsheet of volunteers because we're driving down to bases, bringing them food. They had no food. They were called out on a holiday like the Yom Kippur War. And these 19, 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, they had no food. They had nothing. They were just called. We weren't ready. And the reserves came to help out, and they're helping with the families. And so we have a website that we developed, and it is www.peopleforisrael.com. And it is, as I said, it's anyone that cares about people, that wants to help people defend themselves and survive terror. And we want this to be going long after the war ends. But this war will not be a quick one. There will not be a ceasefire, and we want to be able to feed people, clothe people, and rid our piece of the world from terror, so that all people can live safely and not live in refugee camps and go without, because everything's going to cement for terror tunnels. And on there, you can actually, there's a place for email addresses, and you can enter your email address. And again, we don't have a whole staff. You're not going to get things. No one's selling you anything. From those email addresses, my husband sends out journal entries on the war every couple of days. Some of them, it's really just personal experiences, experiences we've had with people, the people we've had come up, the stories we've heard from others, reactions, people who are helping, people who are loving other people and overlooking differences and just helping together. And it's beautiful and it's very inspirational, but we want to do something good out of all this. And so www.peopleforisrael.com. And we thank everyone that's been donating. There are two ways to donate, actually. There's through an organization, and it's tax deductible, and you can pay with a credit card. But full disclosure, the money goes straight to us, and we pay the suppliers. We're in touch with suppliers. It's hard to get a lot of the things that they need. We've bought rain gear and winter jackets and And, don't forget, Hezbollah's getting in on it too. And we feel that this hasn't even begun yet fully up north. And it gets cold. It gets cold. And they're going to need, the right kind of gear and protection clothing. And so you can get these updates, and also you can donate. But if you donate through that organization, it's tax deductible, but more than 93% of it goes to us and the organization, and converting the funds to shekels and everything else. So we get 93%. And there's also a number there to give to me and my husband directly on our Zelle accounts. And yes, we have a lot of people saying, you know what, I would rather do that, because 100% of it goes to the soldiers and the families. So that's it. That's full disclosure. My husband's all over Google. So I think that if you look him up, you would see that we don't need money for thermal underwear for ourselves. It's okay. Like, we just want to provide it to people that need. And that's what we're doing.
Well, Mrs. Gantshar, I could talk to you about this forever. But yeah, I feel like we're just scratching the surface, really. But unfortunately, I do have to get to another meeting, actually. So thank you so much for taking the time. I really think, like I said, the context that you've been able to provide has been extremely valuable. About the I'm sure I'll have more questions for you afterwards via email, because I'll turn this into a story in the next day or two.
Yes.
And I can send you the link also to that. But yes, just thank you so much. Please, you and everyone there, stay safe. And
Thank you, Tori. Thank you so much for having me. It's really comforting just to be able to have a voice, and to just be heard. And we just want peace for everyone, wherever everyone is, that whatever higher power, if you believe in a higher power, he should bless everyone listening and watching with peace and with goodness in their lives, and just keep loving each other. It's the most important thing.
well, I hope that comes for all of you sooner rather than later, and that you stay safe
Amen.
in the meantime.
Thank you, Tori. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Really appreciate.
Nice to meet you. And like I said, I'll stay in touch by email, but thank you.
Please do. Please do.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.